Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, it is Financial Literacy Month, and we're going to have a great conversation about that. Actually, it's more appropriately called Financial Education Month, but we'll rename it as we see fit. But first, we have a couple of the state's leading reporters. Boy, do we have some great topics for you. The citizenship question on the census form, and a district attorney in one of our counties. Wow, wait till you hear this story, plus all of the money being spent on the governor's race. We got that and much more, and we'll do that after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Okay, here we go. Marc Levy, Associated Press, and Steve Esack, Allentown Morning Call. We're delighted to have them on. All right, I want to talk about 17 states, the District of Columbia, and a whole bunch of cities have sued the U.S. government for adding this additional census question. Where does this go? Josh Shapiro, or go ahead, finish the story.
Yeah, so two of the plaintiffs are the city of Philadelphia and the state of Pennsylvania, with being represented by the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, essentially saying that this question that the Trump administration wants on the census in 2020 would suppress the count of people. It would make it out of step with 6 decades of practice, right. And it would chill the willingness of, say, legal immigrants, even illegal immigrants, to answer honestly whether what their status is, or even fill it out and respond to it. The impact of it being an undercount would affect how federal money is billions and billions of dollars, and federal money is distributed to states. It could also impact how congressional districts are drawn if actual populations are different.
So the concern here, Steve, is that if you're illegal, if you're illegally here, or if there's some other question about your citizenship, you're going to run away. You're not going to do the census, and the Constitution says that all people are to be counted. It doesn't break it down, citizen or otherwise. Right. For the purpose of representation. Go ahead.
No, I think it is. I think it's more of trying to save money, because if you undercount the people, then therefore you don't have to spend as much federal dollars on a bunch of different programs, be it HUD, be it Medicaid, Medicare, that type of thing. I think it's a way for them to save money, and in the back end of it, there could be a diabolical congressional thing where you undercount so many people in different ways to change the way that the maps are drawn.
Good point. There's also the point, I mean, this is multifaceted, I think. There's also the point that some think that if they're counted, then that means there could be reprisals. There could be, here's how many actually there are. We have all these estimates about how many undocumented illegal immigrants are in various places, then it could be roundup time.
Sure. So there's historically, census officials have fended off attempts to do this in previous decades by saying there's two main concerns here: government overreach, undue government intrusion into your lives, but also being concerned about how the government would use that information against you. Even legal immigrants, they've said, might be unwilling to answer the census questions if they're worried about how that information, or they misunderstand how that information might be used. Now, to be clear, the Department of Commerce, which oversees the census, says they're responding to a request from the Department of Justice, which wants this information so they can better enforce the Voting Rights Act and have a more accurate count of voting age populations.
Yeah, and that question, I think, is it up to 1950? I think that question was asked routinely up to then. Mm-hmm. So it's not as though it hasn't been. And there are other community surveys, national community surveys that get done that do include that question, right?
Is there? That I don't know, because the community surveys part of the census, so they're going to follow the same rules as the decade census. Whether the community surveys tend to be just updates along the along the lines. It also opens up the question of, and this could be out there, but I don't think so, is if you start to ask that question about the census, what does that really do to, you know, all the migrant farm workers that come and go and that kind of thing? So it's not just really, could be a Philadelphia number, it could be in Pennsylvania's rural communities that rely on those kind of workers for to
So
harvest.
I guess we're going to find out at some point. It's going to end up, I would be shocked if this didn't end up before the big court, right? The Supreme Court, before it's all of the United States, not of the Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
We have been enough with those.
Right. In
court.
front of the U.S. Supreme Court, and it will be interesting to see how they decipher the meaning of, you know, all whole persons in the Constitution, and whether asking this question would somehow go against that directive in the Constitution.
Right. I know that both of you have been following the governor's race very, very closely, and I must tell you the amount of money that's being spent on television commercials, on the Republican primary, Paul Mango and Scott Wagner. I mean, every other minute it seems like they're having rival commercials going on. Let's run to a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about that. And Governor Wolf has a lot more money. What does all that mean at this point in the governor's race? We still have to get through, all of us have to live through the primary on May 15th. We'll be back. We're going to deal with that in a really hot story out of Bedford County, Pennsylvania. We'll get to that in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back with Marc Levy and Steve Esack, both reporters who cover all things in the Pennsylvania Capitol and government and politics in the state in general. I must tell you, I guess I'm not shocked at the amount of money that's being raised and spent in the governor's race. We've seen very expensive gubernatorial contests. But boy, the Mango-Scott Wagner race, the Paul Mango-Scott Wagner, I mean, it has taken on a life of its own, hasn't it?
It has, yeah, and it is become an extraordinary attack back and forth between Paul Mango and Scott Wagner, and there's still about 6 weeks to go to the primary, and that could mean millions and millions of more dollars are spent.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I was just going to say they both spent a combined $5.5 million in the first 3 months of 2018. That's January through late March on their contest. But when you said they've raised it, 3/4 of the money they raised, as well as the third candidate, Laura Ellsworth, that came from their own pockets.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Scott Wagner and Paul Mango are independently wealthy, you know, businessmen, that sort of thing. So they are self-funding their campaigns to a large extent. Laura Ellsworth, the third candidate, she's taking the moderate stance compared to their more conservative gentlemen. So they are they're all raising their own money. I don't know what that really means. Is that Republican donors are holding off and saying, you know, let's not. I don't want to pick sides at this point in time, or is everyone saying none of these three have a chance against Tom Wolf, so I'm not going to waste my money, and they're going to put their money someplace else, like the legislative races here. So.
Yeah, and if I recall, 4 years ago, then candidate Tom Wolf spent about $1.5 million, $2 million in the first couple of weeks with that Jeep commercial, which we all kind of joke about, but it was pretty effective. Mm-hmm. And Mango and Scott Wagner, it seemed to me, are trying to distinguish themselves by going negative, as opposed when you listen to them in terms of what they say they will do. It's not all that different. I mean, but it's Go ahead.
Yeah, look, it seems that Paul Mango believes that he's running behind Scott Wagner and has begun attacking aggressively, not only on TV, but in debates, aggressively attacking Scott Wagner, who is endorsed by the party to get the nomination. So,
good point.
And Scott Wagner's been responding in kind, and they, I think going into the last 6 weeks, had about a combined $10 million that they reported to the state. So if they spend all that, we may be approaching the most expensive gubernatorial primary in history.
All right, we're going to continue to follow this throughout the primary and the general election. Before we move on to another subject, we've invited both Paul Mango and Laura Ellsworth to come on the program. Senator Wagner has already been on. I understand from our producer that we will have Laura Ellsworth on. They're still trying to get Paul Mango. We want to let them come on the program and make their, make their case. That's what we do. I'll tell you, I was stunned. Bedford County, relatively small county out in the southwestern part of our state, has a district attorney named Higgins. I think he's resigned now, but man, what a situation. I mean, it's virtually unheard of. Which one of you want to explain this?
Go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead, Mark. You start, and then we'll let
you. So if the allegations are true, it does seem to be an extraordinary abuse of power. But this is Bill Higgins. He's been DA there for about 12, 14 years. Until he resigned. The State Attorney General's office filed criminal charges, about 30 criminal charges yesterday, accusing him of essentially
trading his office for sex.
That's right. Yeah, I mean,
that was succinct, wasn't it? Yeah.
Tipping off drug dealers, female drug dealers, to the identity of criminal informants, extracting sexual favors for law enforcement favors.
Now, these are allegations at this point.
These are allegations. That's right. Bill Higgins' attorney says that his client maintains his innocence, and he's questioning the validity of these allegations, considering the source of them, meaning, women who are criminal defendants or who have been targeted by law enforcement.
I mean, this is in Pennsylvania's long history of criminal wrongdoing by public officials. This is unbelievable. I mean, this is a sitting district attorney. This is not a line prosecutor or
a member of the legislature, which both of you have written, as they say, ad nauseum about, right? Go ahead.
Or some council person or some low-level mayor someplace. I mean, this is the law enforcement officer in Bedford County. I mean, the allegations are absolutely stunning. In case investigated through the grand jury, through the Attorney General's office and the Pennsylvania State Police, into these allegations. It's like it's right out of Hollywood. Small time. Small time prosecutor. You can say small time because Bedford County is
small time. but yet extremely important. I mean, these are the people who. Again, we want to make the point that these are allegations. We're not convicting him here. Right. But go ahead.
I was just going to say too. Is Pennsylvania's 67 district attorneys? They're full-time employees. So this is that's a lot of money, a lot of pension money that this gentleman stands to lose if he's convicted of it, and probably a whole lot of jail time for it. He's claiming his innocence and that sort of thing, but we'll wait and see. But it is absolutely extraordinary.
Great update. I just want to end, before I let you go, is that you were not given a script. You were not told that you had to read fake news. I'll tell you, these are great reporters. They don't do that. I read their stuff all the time. And in fact, most of the reporters that cover Pennsylvania politics, I mean, there's a lot of criticism of you all in the Fourth Estate, but the fact is that most of that is pretty solid day-to-day reporting without a lot of personal opinion, and you're not told by anybody what to write. No, I think that's pretty true.
And our bosses don't give us scripts to write or report or anything like that, like some
absolutely.
Other folks.
All right, I got the poster here quickly. Let's do it. What's this all about?
This is our upcoming Gridiron Show. It is the Pennsylvania Legislative Correspondents Association, which is the nonprofit group that Mark and I belong to as reporters who work out of the state capitol covering government. We've put on this show for going on, this is our 87th year. It is a political comedy show. It helps fund our summer internship for college students. We get college students. Every year we pay them to come in and cover
How can
state
people
government.
get a ticket?
People can get a ticket by going to our website, pacapitalreporters.org, or
pacapitalreporters.org.
or coming into the Capitol newsroom
All right.
and purchasing tickets.
They're in my ear. All right, here we go. Financial Education Month coming up. We'll do that in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, welcome back to the program. This is Financial Education Month. We often on this program call it Financial Literacy Month. Patrick Conway sitting across from me, as often is the case, nodding because we do these financial literacy update. But joining me for this is Dorian Smith. He's the Vice President of Business Development at the American Heritage Federal Credit Union. And of course, Pat Conway, he's the President and CEO of the PA Credit Union Association. All right. Do we need a month when you and I do it 12 months out of the year, but doing the month is important.
It is important. You know, it's been celebrated since 2000.
Yeah.
The governor typically issues a proclamation, and it's an important way to remind people that financial literacy, is really important and to help give people the tools they need to make good financial decisions in their lives. So we look forward to celebrating it every April.
Yeah. And Dorian, what we've tried to stress, and I want to talk about today, is the so-called need. I mean, we have young people that now have credit cards, and you have all these reports all the time about people I don't have to tell you. You deal with them in your own,
absolutely.
in your own organization.
Statistics show that kids are going to college. When they get to college, their first year, they get in their credit card. They're charging up to $4,000 in debt. You talk about student loans. So student loans last year increased by 11% and has increased to $1.2 billion. Wow. So it's definitely a need for us to kind of concentrate on April and Financial Literacy Month.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we also talk about is who should be doing this financial literacy training. Obviously, the parents are the first, whether it's good or bad, depending on the parenting situation, the parents, it's the first place.
Well, it is, and a lot of times, a lot of parents say that, hey, my kids don't know anything about budgeting. They don't know anything about, credit cards or finances. So a lot of times they look to the schools to provide that service. And right now, schools are more focused on, testing and those things. So it's a lot of financial institutions now that are taking that responsibility on to go into the various schools, to partner with the school districts, to partner with the various communities to provide this education to the students.
And that's been a big emphasis of your organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We do financial reality fairs. Between our reality fairs and our credit union in-school branches, we're in over 260 of the 500 school districts around the state. So it's an important way for financial institutions and for credit unions in particular.
And what's the reaction been? I mean, to schools? I mean, you have over 200. Obviously, they have to be doing it. Do you deal with that directly yourself?
So we partner with about 40 different schools. 40. And so what we're able to do is sometimes they invite us to come out and speak to various classes, business classes. Sometimes they invite us to assemblies that they may have. But right now what we're doing, we're inviting a lot of schools to come to the credit union. So we have field trips to the credit union.
Okay.
And so that's what we're working on.
We're going to run to a break. I want to talk about some of these innovative programs that are important, and we'll do that. This is an extremely important subject, and we'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society, inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine, and by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, shape the future of long-term care.
All right, Dorian, let's talk a little bit about innovative programs, reality fairs. It's just not going out and sitting and lecturing in front, the students. And
well, that's the thing we have to do. We have to be creative with how we reach the youth and how we're able to educate individuals. So at one point in time, it used to be individuals, going into these big places and learning about budgeting, learning about savings. But now you have to be very creative. So we have the reality fairs where we're able to go into schools and we ask the students what type of career they want and tell them what type of salary that is, and then they have to go around and determine what they can buy with that type of salary. So it's really...
So you're setting up a real, this is your budget, you're out of school, you're in a family, or you're running your own house. Go ahead.
Absolutely, and those are the things that they really get to see what they can afford, what they can buy. So we're putting seminars and workshops into communities, into libraries, and then you have to think about how you're going to get them to come. So the name of them, so versus budgeting, maybe we would say, hey, don't blow your dough. It's just very...
Budgeting, wait, let me do this. Budgeting, everybody, it's like when we talk about the state budget, right? Go ahead.
Exactly. So, finding ways to kind of engage them, to want them to come and participate. And then at the end of the day, they're learning really three factors. One is about spending money, how to save money, and also how to share money.
I think
those are the things that are important.
And what's the significance of April? Here we are. It's still winter. It's not springtime. It's winter. But go ahead.
Well, we're through the holiday season. A lot of folks spend a lot of money at that time. It's sort of beginning of the second quarter of the year. The weather's starting to warm up. It's a good time to talk about finances and financial education. And we look forward to celebrating the Financial Education Month every April.
Yeah. The other thing is, what really amazes me is, and I'm reading this list, junior achievement, a Better Choice program, partnership with PA Library Association. I mean, it's not as though we're talking about one little facet. I don't care which one of you take this up, but it's that you've branched out all over the place.
It is a broad. Go ahead.
Definitely, you have to be able to partner, because that's how you're going to reach the masses. And you want to be able to share the education that we have. But we're able to have an educated consumer, then you have a better person being able to buy, being able to save, and being able to share with the rest of the community.
Yeah, we know how important that is with people getting into debt, and you hear these stories all the time, right?
Right. No, absolutely. But we're doing now reality fairs for folks coming out of the state prison system, re-entering society, in addition to school students. I think it's a broad coalition. Department of Corrections, Department of Banking and Securities, our foundation.
Let's talk some more about that. Some of these programs that you have. I think that would be very interesting to talk about in future programs. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, you stay well.